What is a race condition and how can we fix it using best practices? First, I explain the theoretical part and then we'll solve the problem with code. But before that, I want to apologize for mispronouncing the word Django. The most important thing is the content. And what I've prepared for you comes from years of study and experience working at different companies. The way I code is the same approach I use in real world projects I'm currently working on. So, what is a database race condition? A race condition in a database happens when two or more operations happen at the same time, and the outcome depends on the order in which they happen. If not handled properly, this can lead to unexpected or incorrect results in your database. The problem when you are using Docker Compose is that it has a depends on option which we configure for our app service, and we said the app service depends on the database. This ensures that the service itself starts, but it doesn't guarantee that the application running within the service has started as well. It only confirms that the service is up, not that the application is fully ready. If we use another metaphor, the service is like your computer or laptop. It ensures that the laptop has started, but it doesn't guarantee that the application you want to run on it, like Google Chrome, is actually running. In this case, the laptop represents the service and the application is Postgres. So Docker Compose makes sure the service has started, but it doesn't make sure that Postgres is running inside that service. This means we might run into a problem when starting our Docker Compose environment. To demonstrate the problem, I'm going to show you on this timeline. So here we have a timeline for our database service and our Django app service. Because we have configured depends on for our Django app, we have specified that the app depends on the database. So Docker Compose ensures that the database starts first, meaning the database service starts up before the app. So the database is starting, and then as soon as the database finishes starting, the Django app will then start. However, just because the database has started, it doesn't mean that it's finished setting up and ready to accept connections. In fact, when you first run your database, it can take a while to complete the initial setup of Postgres before it's ready to accept connections, and this can actually take longer than it takes Django to start after both the database and the Django app service has started. So as soon as the Django app finishes starting, it will then try and connect to the database, but Postgres is still in the process of starting, so it's not ready to accept connections yet. So the Django app will crash. It will throw an exception saying something like unable to connect to the database. By the time the Postgres database is finally ready, the Django app has already crashed and we would need to restart the service from the beginning. So this problem can occur when you're running locally. It can also occur in production. So we need to find some kind of solution for these to make sure that the application can start reliably. So the solution is to add what's called a wait for DB command. So this is a custom Django management command that we are going to create that allows us to wait for the database to be ready before we continue running our application. It works by simply checking for the availability of the database, and then it will continue execution once the database is ready. So it will keep checking the database until it gets a successful response. When it gets the successful response, we'll then continue with the application and everything will start smoothly. So to do this, we are going to create a custom Django management command, and I'm going to show you how you do that. So once we have implemented this custom Django command, the timeline will look a bit like this. So it starts the same as before. The Docker Compose will make sure that the database service starts first. Once the database service is started, it will then start the Django app, and then Postgres is now starting at the same time as the Django app. But this time we have the wait for DB, so instead of just starting our Django app and trying to connect to the database, we are going to call our wait for DB command. And what this will do is it will check, is Postgres ready? And then because Postgres is still in the process of starting, will say no, it's not ready. It will then check again, will say no, it's not ready. But then the third time it checks the database is had enough time to start up, and then we can continue with our Django app execution and everything will work smoothly. So this is what we are going to be implementing. Before we can create our management command, we need to create a new Django app in our projects that we can add the command to. The Django app we are going to create is called core, and we'll do that by opening up our terminal or git bash if you're on Windows, and I'm going to write docker hyphen compose space run space hyphen hyphen rm space app space sh space hyphen c, and then python space manage.py space start app space, and finally the name of the app that we are going to create, and it is core. So all this does is add the template app to our project. So if we see here, we have the new core app here. So I'm just going to open up core, and we can delete tests because we are not going to be creating them. And then we can also delete views because our core app isn't going to actually serve any web views. It's just going to be used for models and for things like app management command. And then the final thing that we need to do is we need to open up our settings.py file, and we need to add the core app to install apps core here. So this just makes sure that the app is installed in our project. So save the settings.py file, and that's all we need to do for setting up our initial app. Now we have our core app created, we can go ahead and actually add our wait underscore for underscore db.py command. Creating custom Django management commands is documented in the official Django documentation. I'm going to walk you through how to create a basic command, which we will use for our wait underscore for underscore db command. So, what is a Django management command? In Django, a management command is a custom command that you can run using Python space manage.py space the name of the command, and in our case is wait underscore for underscore db. With custom management commands, you can create your own commands to automate tasks or run custom scripts within your Django project. The other question you may ask is, where do you put them? Or how would be the folder structure to create your own commands? To make Django recognize your command, you need this folder structure inside one of your apps. So we created the core app. Now we are going to create a management folder inside the core app. Then add an underscore underscore init underscore underscore .py file, and a commands folder inside the management folder. And finally, we'll create another underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py file and the wait underscore for underscore db dot py command inside the commands folder. So going back to our project, the first thing we need to do is go inside the core app here and create a new directory called management. And inside the management directory, we'll create a file, namely underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py, and also a folder that would be commands. And finally, inside the commands folder, we are going to create a new file, underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py. And finally, the command file, in our case, is wait underscore for underscore db dot py. So at the top of the wait underscore for underscore db command, we are going to add a comment or docstring. The Django command to wait for the database to be available. And then we are going to type from the Django dot core dot management dot base import base command, and then class command base command. I'm going to add another docstring. So Django command to wait for database. And finally, the method handle self asterisk args double asterisk options. This imports Django's base command class, the base class you inherit from when creating a custom management command. This defines a new command class. The class name must be command. Django looks specifically for this name when loading your custom command. This is the main method that runs when you execute the command. I mean the command python space manage.py space wait underscore for underscore db. So these arguments is for any positional arguments you pass, and finally asterisk asterisk options is for keyword arguments or flags. So in general, this code sets up the skeleton for a custom Django command called wait underscore for underscore db. So I'm going to show you a simple example of how to use a command in Django. So I'm going to modify the function handle. So here I'm going to write self dot std out dot write, and then, for example, hello from your custom Django command. So with this simple example, you understand how to create and use a command. So I'm going to open up the terminal, but before I save it, and here I'm going to write docker hyphen compose space run space hyphen hyphen rm space add space h space hyphen c, and finally python manage.py, and the name of our command that is wait underscore for underscore db. So before execute this command, you have to be sure that your Docker engine is running. So here you can see the result. Finally, we can go ahead and create our command. So we are going to start by adding some imports here. Import time, and then from scopg2 import operational error as scopg2 op error. So this is the error that the scopg2 package sometimes throws when the database isn't ready to accept connections. And then from django.db.utils import operational error, and this is the error that Django throws when the database isn't ready. So here we can remove this string, and instead I'm going to type waiting for database. Database. I'm going to write everything, and then at the end I'm going to explain all to you. So db underscore up, it's equal to false. Then while db underscore up is false, then try self.check databases equal to default. Then db up is equal to true. So accept scopg2 op error and operational error. So self.stdout.write database unavailable, waiting 1 second, and then time.sleep 1, and finally self.stdout.write self.style.success database available. So I'm going to save it. So as I explained, previous lesson, this is the main method of a Django custom command. Django runs this method when you call python space manage.py space wait underscore for underscore db. This prints a message to the terminal, so this just shows in our console the message waiting for database. This is a flag to track whether the database is available, so initially set to false. This keeps looping until the database becomes available. This is a Django utility method that checks whether the database connection works. Default refers to the default DB in your settings.py. If it works, db underscore up becomes true and the loop ends. But if the db is still starting up, it fails and it raises an exception. This catches the errors that can happen when the db is not ready. So Psycop G2 OP error is a Postgres specific connection error. An operational error is a general DB error Django might raise. So when code, it prints a message and waits 1 second before trying again, and then it's going to continue with the loop here. So in this way, we keep trying the database. It keeps logging to the screen so we know when the database is available, and then we can reliably start our application. And finally, once the DB is ready, this prints a success message with green color styling in the terminal. To summarize, this command is super useful in Dockerized Django apps, where the app might start before the database is ready. It helps prevent startup crashes by waiting patiently until the DB is available. So let's go ahead and actually test this command. I'm going to open up our terminal, but again, you need to make sure that your Docker engine is running. So I'm going to type Docker compose run -rm app h-c and then python manage.py wait underscore for underscore db. So it started pretty much immediately, but we can see that the wait for db command is working. So now let's move on the next lesson.